Hello, welcome to part 2 of our stamp positioning series. Today I want to talk about some top tips to use with any stamp positioner, and I'm going to be using my Hampton Art Stamp Perfect and my Misti to give you 10 of my top tips. So let's get started. So first of all, the basics of using a stamp press. A stamp press is designed that you can put your stamp on one side and then you can just bring it over and stamp it down onto your cardstock, which would be on this side. And you can do that over and over again. So for some of those thicker stamps, so say one of the waffle flowers, where they have those really bold lines, like on this card here, I could use my stamp press to keep inking up my stamp and going back onto any areas that I found were missing. So that is the basic principles. This is the Misti, and I also showed you in the previous video on comparisons of the two, the Stamp Perfect tool. And today I'm going to show you both of these between our 10 tips. And if you've never used one before, the idea is that you can take a piece of cardstock. I'm just going to grab one here. You use the magnets that come with it, and I'm going to show you some alternatives as well. And you stick it down. You can put your stamp in place, you close your lid, you open it up, we're going to then ink up our stamp, and then you can see there I've missed some areas, so again I can ink it up and I can go back, and I can do that as many times as I like to build up the intensity of colour. Now that's with a photopolymer. If you are using a rubber mounted stamp like this one, so that's on the Easy Mount foam, you need to take out this foam piece. So we take that out. I'm still going to keep my piece of grid paper in there, which we'll get to later. I'm going to turn my card. That's my fresh piece. Here we go. I'm going to stick that down still with my magnets. I put my stamp down. Now if I put my photopolymer down, it won't reach my cardstock because it hasn't got that extra depth that the foam mount gives you. So what I will do is I will close up my foam mount, and I'm just going to stamp it with the ombre pad, as it's the one that I've got next to me. And there we go. And again, I can just re-ink that back up, and I can go back if I want some stronger colour. So now that you know the basics of using the Misti or the Stamp Positioner style press, let's get started with our tips. So tip number 1 is about using your Misti or your stamp press to stamp on small elements like this. Now the key to that is this repositionable glue. It's a bit like a snail, but it's called Easy Dots. If you've never followed one of our posts before, you can just click below the video and there will be a link to hedgehoghollow.co.uk to the specific blog post that goes with this video, and there'll be links to everything I use so you can reference back to it and you can see where I get mine from. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this to my grid paper. You could also stick it to the acetate underneath, but this is easier to clean. So we're going to stick that down and it won't move particularly easily. We're then going to pop our stamp on the top. And remember, I've got no foam mat in here because this is a rubber mounted stamp. And I'm just going to ink it up with some basic black. And this will give me the perfect impression on my small element. And I can just stick this now. I can remove this. There's a little bit of residue on here. Now to get rid of that, you can use some Goo Gone just on a Q-tip. Or you can use one of these adhesive erasers. And all I do is just go over the top, and then it's all gone. And if you need to, you can do it on the back, but it is just temporary adhesive. You can put your snail straight over the top, or some foam dots, or whatever you need to do. So let's move on to tip 2. So this tip is also about stamping on smaller elements, and it's just another way you can do this. So I'm going to use this 1-inch banner that I punched out with the banner triple punch, and I'm going to use the low tack painter's tape that I've just taken a little piece off of here. This is the same one that I always link to. It's one of those staples that you need. Because I'm going to use a photopolymer, I'm going to pop my mouse pad just back underneath again, and I just pop my magnets down to make sure that my grid piece doesn't move. And I'm going to take my banner and I'm just going to stick it down with that painter's tape. I'm going to put my sentiment on top. Close over the lid to pick it up. And we can just ink it up as normal. And then we can close the lid. And you've got your perfect sentiment. You can see there, I just missed a tiny little bit. This is the versatility of the Misti or stamp press. I can ink that back up again. I can close it and it will be exactly where it was last time. And you can see there, so that's much nicer. Any smudges, or if you just want to clean your stamp, just use the stamp chamois. You can wipe that over straight on there and you're all done. So let's move on to tip 3. So also when we're not stamping, this surface is acrylic, so it's really useful. And if you're anything like me, at the end of a stamping session, I'll have loads of stamps that need cleaning, particularly if I'm doing my 3-step or if I'm doing some bulk cleaning. Now, when I'm stamping, I quite often will put these on the lid of my closed Misti, and then I just know where my stamps are all of the time. Or alternatively, I stick them all on here when they're all inky and I clean them off. I will grab my stamp chamois, which I find is perfect for this. You can spritz it with some stamp cleaner if you want to, or I just keep mine generally moist. And then you can just go over the top like this and you can clean them all off perfectly. You can also, if you need to, you can apply some stays on cleaner to a particular stamp. So for instance, this one I use some archival on, and then you can just clean it off. The great thing with the stamp chamois is you can just stick this in the washing machine, which I do once a week when I wash my cleaning cloths after the cleaner's been. Then I just pop this in the wash too and keep it nice and moist, and I pop it back into one of these containers. This is a salt pig, which again I will link up for you, but I recommend keeping it in there. It keeps it nice and moist, but it also doesn't give you any of those bad smells. So let's move on to tip number 4. So for this one, I've grabbed my Stamp Perfect, and I'm going to show you about making your own grid paper. So when you buy a Misti, it comes with a pad of grid paper, like the one you saw me using a second ago, which is like this. Now, I got the idea from Jennifer Maguire to laminate it, which was a brilliant idea. You can see here I've got a few smudges, but they easily clean off. I can use some alcohol blending solution to get some of these stays on marks off. You can just use your stays on cleaner. You can use your stamp cleaner, but normally I just take my chamois over and give it a good clean because it is water resistant. One of these will probably last you quite a long time. You can see there, you can just clean it off. It's also a great surface for your distress inks. You can spritz them and just pick up your ink. It's just one of those things. There we go. You can see how easily those clean up. But when you buy a Stamp Perfect, it doesn't come with one. And if you need more than the Misti comes with, then they are very expensive. So I decided to create my own. I had some of the centimetre grid paper from Stampin' Up, and I had some of the American inch paper, and I did a sample of both to show you. So I decided to cut this edge where it has the measurements on it. You could just cut straight in the middle if you wanted to, depending on how you wanted. And again, I did it here with the centimetre one. And you can see these just slot in. And off you go. You can use it as a grid, or you can just use it as a basic mat. It's entirely up to you. So that was something that I was really happy to find. So let's move on to number 5 of a really great thing you can also do with your Misti. So you can also use your Misti or stamp positioner just like a Stamp-a-ma-jig to get perfect stamp placement. Now, I didn't stamp anything out here, so I just quickly squiggled a heart on here. But if I, for instance, wanted to put Celebrate underneath and I wanted it to be straight and absolutely perfect, I might not know exactly where that rubber is and how well it's cut around the sentiment. So my tip is to get it roughly where you want it, close up your lid, and then put down a piece of acetate. Now this is quite thick acetate, and I'll link up where I got this from. The sheets of 12 by 12 tend to be the most inexpensive way to buy it, and you will get a lot of use out of those. So I'm going to ink up my stamp first of all, and it doesn't have to be too great this time, and you stamp it onto your acetate like so. Once you've done that, you can take your piece of cardstock and you can slide it underneath like so, and you can slide it around until your sentiment is exactly where you want it to be. Then put magnets onto your cardstock and remove the acetate, so that when you stamp down now, your sentiment will be exactly where you left it, so it will be perfect under your image. Another great use for your stamp positioner. So let's move on to a slightly different use for your stamp press. So this tip has nothing actually to do with stamping, but it helps you mount your cards with the perfect mounting. Now, unfortunately, when I was getting ready for this video, I realised I had lost one of my grids, but I will link up to it. Simon Says Stamp does an acetate grid you can use for this, which makes the process much easier because you can centre it on the squares rather than having to use the, oh, we called our cable there, the lid of the Misti. But that's fine, we can get by with that for today, but I would recommend it if you like the use for this one. So I have, this is the foam that comes in your stamp press, and I have a second piece which is just some funny foam that I got at one of the big box stores. It's like $1 for a sheet. So I'm just going to pop that down there, and I'm going to show you how to use this for perfect matting. So we quite often, we layer it up, we think, yeah, that looks absolutely perfect. Okay, but now I have a problem. I can't, when I put my glue down, I don't get the ability to move it around quite as easily. So my tip for this is take some of that low tack tape we talked about earlier. What I'm going to do is I am going to put a tiny little bit of this repositional dots onto the corner of my Misti, just like that. So I have matted this up perfectly, and if you have the grid, the acetate grid is a bit like this, but it's got a cross in the middle and it's see-through, so you can lay it over the top, and you can make sure that all of these areas are nice and even. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick my cable back up so we don't keep catching it, and so that little bit of tack of tape I'm going to pull over, and you're going to pick up the black piece using that temporary adhesive. And then I'm going to just use my snail, and I'm going to snail it up as normal. Oh, that one's run out. That's enough just to show you, I'm sure. Stuck to a piece of stamps as well. And then when you close the lid of your stamp press, the snail adhesive tack will be much more than the temporary adhesive, and the two will stick together. Now, if you do get a little bit of residue, I haven't had a problem with that. Again, you can use your adhesive eraser just to get rid of that, or if you're mounting something on top of it, like a picture or something anyway, that will work perfectly. So let's move on to our next tip, and I'm just going to show you how to do bulk stamping as the Misti was made for. So one of the original uses for the Misti was for bulk stamping. So if you're making lots of Christmas or birthday cards, invitations, that sort of thing, you can always make sure your stamp's in the right place. So what you do is you butt your piece up to this ruler, which has got a nice indent in here, and we'll just pop a magnet down to make sure it doesn't move. I have this sentiment that I want to make sure is at the bottom of every single piece. This is also the same size piece, which we'll use in a second. We're going to pick our sentiment up, and we're just going to make sure that doesn't move. I'm just going to ink up on the left side here my sentiment, and I'm going to close my lid. So there's number one. Then I can just easily slide that out, slide number two in, ink up my sentiment again, and I can close my lid. And on both pieces of cardstock, my sentiment is in exactly the same place, and you can keep doing that over and over and over. And it's also great for those detail stamps I was saying earlier, where you can keep going back and getting as much detail as you need. So let's move on to the next tip. So this one's about cleaning your stamp press. Whatever stamp press you have, it will have this laser etch design on top. And the best thing that all the manufacturers recommend to use is this Novus cleaner. There is a red one as well, which I've run out of. But the first one is absolutely fine. You can just spritz that on the top, and I would take your stamp chamois or a piece of paper towel, and you can just make sure you clean off all the marks. And this is absolutely, this will get rid of fine scratches and any marks you have on there. It's also great for using all around your ruler. So if you get any ink smudges, you can put it along there and it won't remove any of your numbers. Now, when it comes to, pick up that block, to cleaning this side of your stamp press, you can use your Novus, absolutely, but quite often it'll get gunked up with inks. So for that, there's a few things you can do. You can use some Stay-On cleaner. You can just dab it on and then wipe it off with the stamp chamois. You can spritz with your stamping mist, which is just a stamp cleaner. So I just spray that on, and again, you can clean it. It'll take all your inks off. If it's something sticky, I recommend you use your Goo Gone. Or for those really stubborn stains, I didn't know, you may know that you can use this alcohol blending solution. To do that, you just open it up, you put it on, and this is just like a pure alcohol. This is what you use for your alcohol inks, and it is awesome for cleaning. So if I start cleaning all over, you'll see these stubborn black marks that I've got here will start to lift off, and with a little bit of effort with my alcohol, I can get this absolutely sparkling clean again. So they are my tips for cleaning your Misti, and I have 2 more, so let's get on to tip number 9. Your stamp press is a great way to get perfect results on your multi-step stamps. I have a 3-step stamp here from Hero Arts. They're layered seahorses, and I'm going to use a couple of distressings to show you how to get that nice result. I have a piece of shimmer cardstock in here, so it looks like they're under the sea. And first of all, I'm going to take the most detailed seahorse and I'm going to lay him down, or her down, and I'm going to adhere him to my lid. And I'm going to use the dried marigold to ink it up. And I'm going to stamp that down. Then I'm going to use my second piece. Let's just give that a wipe off. And I'm going to grab my second piece of the 3-step stamp. And what you can do is you can spend the time layering it up absolutely perfectly. And again, I'm going to close the lid to pick it up. But this time I'm just going to pop in a little scrap of paper, which I'm just going to use my magnet on as well. And this is because I want to stamp off my ripe persimmon first. So I'm just going to close it once on my scrap, and then I'll remove that, and I'm going to stamp it then on top of my dried marigold. And then my final step, I'm going to use the final piece here, and again I'm just going to layer it up, and I'm going to close the lid. And I'm going to just use the ripe persimmon without stamping it off this time to give us those nice bright extra details. And there you go. So that's our seahorse, and you can see it lines up absolutely perfectly. So that's another use for your stamp press. And I just have one more for you. So let's get started on that one. So my last tip is making shaped sentiments. Now you could make waves, you could make circles, you could make ovals. And it comes after watching Christina Werner's video last night about her circular sentiment around the unicorn. But I found that when I tried it out, it wasn't quite as easy as she made it look. So the best way that I found to do it was to take the thick piece of acetate like we had earlier. I put a little bit of the easy dots down. You can see just there's some of the dots. And then I stuck my sentiment around. Now you still need to be quite firm with your sentiment, but you should find that it sticks much easier with that little bit of tacky temporary adhesive on there. If there isn't quite enough, you can add a little bit more just in the area. Then once we've stuck our C down, which really doesn't want to stay anywhere, I'm going to be quite quick and I'm just going to put my lid down. And the one thing I am going to do, and you can just peel this straight off, it won't stick to your stamp. I'm just going to put my C up because I know that that's right. And the great thing about this is I can test it out to make sure it's exactly where I want it to be. And then I am going to ink up my sentiment. And I'm going to stamp it out. So you see, you get you, me and the C perfectly around the bottom there. But my tip is just to add that little bit of temporary adhesive. Once you're done, just take a tiny bit of Goo Gone. You can use a paper towel, or you can I just use my stamp chamois because I tend to wash it out fairly regularly. And then all you need to do is just wipe that, oh, I'm caught, straight over, and you will see that's coming off nicely. And then you can just take that all straight off, and you can reuse it again. Or if you want to, I have one piece like this that I use again and again with, you can see there's little blots of adhesive all over it, and then I just pick it up wherever I want it to be. So that is my final tip. I hope you enjoyed all of our Misti tips today. Again, don't forget to link up on the blog if you want to purchase anything that I've used today. I've given you links to the exact products that I have used. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Hedgehog Hollow Inc. We're now on Instagram at Hedgehog Hollow. And of course, there's the website of hedgehoghollow.co.uk. So thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like our channel if you enjoyed this video. And we look forward to stamping with you again soon. Bye.